Okay, so today I'm going to give some feedback on your IELTS writing task 1. So let's take a look. So this is your work. The graphs describe blah blah blah, and there are 4 paragraphs here. Like I used to tell you that we need to organize the writing in at least 4 paragraphs. You could also write 4 or more than 4 paragraphs, but it would be better if you write um, around 4 paragraphs. But you need to remember that what I mean by 4 paragraphs, it should be organized like this. So first here we have an introduction where you should paraphrase the task or the instruction given in task 1. So that's what first paragraph should be written about. And then the next paragraph should be about the overview. So like a short overview overall, you need to explain what's the most obvious trend you see during the observation, and the overview cannot cannot have details in it. So there would be no numbers, there would be no like percentage, just the overview overall. Okay, so this is your overall the line art, blah blah blah. It should be in the second paragraph. What about this in your second paragraph here? Actually, this is the it also the overview, but looks like you kind of re-explained uh, the content of the graphs. I wouldn't say you don't need to do that, but if you want to organize your writing well, you need to follow this form. So in the first paragraph, you state the introduction, you paraphrase the instruction given in the task, and then in the second paragraph, you give a very brief overview related to the most obvious trend you see while observing the graphs. And then the third paragraph should be the body 1. Body 1, you could explain or you could elaborate what's happening in the first graph, which is the ownership, the level of ownership of electrical appliances. So you could talk about that in the body 1. And then in body 2, you could talk about the amount of time spent doing housework, the amount of time spent or used in housework. So you could talk about that in the in body 2. Okay, let's take a look in detail related to your writing. So here you have the introduction. The graphs describe the evolution in ownership of electrical appliances and how much time was spent by housework activities in households in single country between 1920 to 2019. Okay, so here I already mark in red some words. So the first one is evolution, the second is how much time, and the third one in single country, and the last one between 1920 to 2019. So first, evolution. Actually, evolution means changes, yeah, transformation. But the evolution is not really working in this topic. We usually have evolution words related to like human evolution or language evolution is kind of heavy. It's kind of heavy to have evolution here. So it would be better if you change the evolution into the changes or the trends. So the graphs describe the changes in ownership, blah, blah, blah. Because evolution is kind of heavy and unnatural. Okay, the second one is how much time. Well, actually, I do understand what does it mean, but it would be better if you use the amount of time spent. The amount of time spent. Or the amount of time used. But naturally, when related to time, we should say spent. Yeah, the amount of time spent doing housework activities or doing housework in households, and then in single country. Well, in single country, single should be uh should be preceded by determiner or article in a single country, but you better use in one country because single is not really, again, it's not natural. It would be better and it would be safe if we use in one country. And the next one, here you write between 1920 to 2019. Well, actually, the preposition should be matched with the previous one. So if you use between, so you have to use and here. Between blah 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 and. Or if you want to use to, you should change between here into from. So from 1920 to 2019 or between 1920 and 2019. Okay, so how we should write the introduction. I think you can imagine how can we write the introduction. And here it is. The graphs describe the changes in the ownership of electrical appliances and the amount of time spent doing housework in one country between 1920 and 2019. Okay, hopefully you can understand for the first paragraph, which is introduction. Now we move to the next part, which is the overview. So here is your overview. Overall, the line art in the first graph rose most of the time. Meanwhile, the second graph show decrease of numbers year by year. Okay, first, line art. Line art, I know what you mean by saying line art, but in English language, line art means um, line arts means something different. So it's not only lines on the graphs, because you put art here, which means different from what we should use in this Ielts writing, especially for this, yeah. So you better change the line art into the trend overall, the trend in the first graph, or maybe you want to use this overall, the figures in the first graph, or just use the lines. Overall, the lines in the first graph, rows, blah, 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 increased gradually or generally increased over the period. Most of the time, mm, it would be understandable if you're speaking with other people. I mean, in speaking parts. But in writing, maybe you want to use this over the period or throughout the period. It sounds more natural and also a little bit formal, okay? Especially in writing. Next, meanwhile, the second graph show decreased. Okay, show and decreased are verbs. So both of them are verbs. And verbs cannot meet with another verb without maybe two or any other preposition in it. So you better change it, or you better elaborate this by saying showed a downward trend significantly, or showed a decline dramatically. Show means menunjukkan, and after you use show, it should be a noun. Menunjukkan apa? Menunjukkan penurunan. So, you can say showed a downward trend or showed a decline, sebuah penurunan, dramatically. Okay. Or you can write the overall just like this. Overall, the trends of all three electrical appliances increased over the period, while the amount of time spent on housework decreased significantly. Among the three appliances, refrigerators experience the most dramatic growth. So this is the overall, or the overview. Okay, now we move to body one. So here is your body one. Electrical appliances, blah, blah, blah. Okay, first I'm going to see this, the ownership of electrical appliances. Okay. Well, actually, you can arrange your body one and body two into this. So body one, you focus on talking about the ownership of electrical appliances. So washing machine, refrigerators, and so on and so forth. You focus on the ownership. How many people owned particular electrical appliances. And then in body two, you can talk about the of amount of time spent doing the housework. So here actually you talk about both of them, but you tend to put it in one paragraph. So yeah, I'm afraid if the um, if the examiner will think that you don't organize your writing well. So it would be better if you put those two topics into two different paragraphs. Body one, talk about the ownership, and body two, talk about the amount of time spent. Okay. Now we talk about the, okay, is. As you know, that the topic was about what was happening in 1920. 1920 was in the past. So you should use past. You should use was here because 1920 is in the past. Okay, now shows. You should use showed instead of shows. Okay, and here is your opening, yeah. Electrical appliances with the most interesting blah blah blah. With the most interesting what? Electrical appliances, peralatan listrik yang memiliki yang paling menarik bla 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 menarik apanya? Interesting what? With the most interesting trend, with the most interesting rates, with the most interesting figure. Nah, di sini diperjelas karena interesting adalah kata sifat dan dia membutuhkan noun di sini. Menarik apa? Oke. Or you can also use this. The most interesting figure of electrical appliances is refrigerator. The most interesting, I don't know, maybe you want to say the most interesting changes of electrical appliances is refrigerator. Nah, selanjutnya di sini ada meanwhile vacuum cleaner and washing machine more than 30%. Okay, take a look on your sentence here. Meanwhile, vacuum cleaner and washing machine more than 30%. As Indonesian, actually, I do understand what you mean here, but in English, every single sentence need a verb. Harus ada kata kerjanya. Dan di sini tidak memiliki kata kerja. Sedangkan vacuum cleaner dan mesin cuci lebih dari 30%. Apanya yang lebih dari 30%? Nah, karena tidak ada kata kerjanya, kalimat ini menjadi tidak lengkap. It would be better if you say, meanwhile, vacuum cleaner and washing machine increased more than 30%. Jadi pastikan ada verb di setiap kalimat. Okay, here we have a sentence. In 1980 to 2000, refrigerator was hit 100% of usage following vacuum cleaner hit the peak at 2000 to 2019. Okay, take a look on this. Was hit. Was is to be. Hit is a verb. To be plus verb, the meaning would be passive voice. Or here, dipukul. Or dicapai. Sementara kan di sini maksudnya bukan di ya, bukan dipukul atau bukan dicapai, tapi mencapai. Berarti you should say refrigerator hit the peak of the ownership level in 100%. Hit the peak. Jadi mencapai. Atau refrigerator was used, digunakan by everyone in 2000. Nah, jadi perhatikan ya, was hit. To be dengan kata kerja itu, kalau dia ketemu berarti artinya di. Was used, digunakan. Was written, ditulis. Jadi kalau misalnya mau mencapai, berarti tidak usah pakai was, langsung hit. Atau reach. Refrigerator reach the peak of the ownership level in 100% in 2000, for example. Pada tahun 2000 ya. Nah, selanjutnya, however, the number of hours, bla bla bla, the number of hours. Nah, ini kan sebenarnya, ya, I do understand what does it mean. Jumlah waktu atau jumlah jam. Jumlah jam apa? Jumlah jam yang digunakan apa? Digunakan nontonkah? Atau digunakan apakah? Atau digunakan apa? It doesn't clear. So you should state what you mean. The number of hours used in doing housework was contradicted with the percentage of the ownership level. Karena usage dengan penggunaan ya, itu juga bisa berarti digunakan, maksudnya jumlah waktu barang listrik itu digunakan. Jadi jangan sampai makna atau kata yang kita pilih itu ambigu sehingga membuat examiner nantinya kebingungan. So we better say, however, the average amount of time spent doing housework showed the opposite trend. Nah, selanjutnya kalimat kedua di sini we can conclude the electronic devices was more efficient day by day. Sebenarnya sometimes we can suggest what is happening by observing the graphs, but we better avoid making conclusions. Apalagi kalau itu bisa membawa kita kepada mengarah pada apa ya, berasumsi. Nah, itu tidak, kita harus menghindari hal tersebut. Kalau tidak ditunjukkan di dalam graf, berarti itu akan masuk pada asumsi pribadi. I know that sometimes we want to make an assumption, so our writing is hit ya. or reach 150 words, but then we should be very careful on making one. Oke, jadi di sini ada however, the average amount, rata-rata banyaknya waktu yang digunakan dalam mengerjakan tugas rumah showed the opposite trend, menunjukkan hal yang sebaliknya. Nah, kamu mengatakan was contradicted. Ya, oke, very good. Cuman di sini kamu hanya perlu memperjelas number of hours apa. Kemudian was contradicted with the percentage of the ownership. Berlawanan dengan kepemilikan ya, memiliki. Oke, jadi ini adalah body one yang saya sediakan. So here there are six sentences in body one talking about the ownership of three different electrical appliances. Nah, coba perhatikan. Setiap kalimat saya menebalkan kata kerjanya. In 1920, around 40% of households owned, punya atau memiliki a washing machine. While. Nah, karena ada while di sini atau kata penghubung, maka dipastikan kalimat ini mempunyai dua kata kerja, owned dan had. Selanjutnya, kalimat yang kedua, in contrast, less than 10% owned, memiliki a refrigerator. Oke, kurang dari 10% memiliki. Nah, selanjutnya, over the following decades, ownership of all three appliances increased. Ini adalah kata kerjanya. Kalimat keempat, kata kerjanya adalah rose rapidly and, karena di sini ada connected ya, maka di sini juga dipastikan ada dua kata kerja. Rose and rich. Nah, kalimat selanjutnya, kata kerjanya adalah increased. Also increased steadily, reaching almost 100% by 2000. Oke, selanjutnya, although. Nah, ini adalah kata penghubung juga, dan itu menjadikan kalimat ini akan mempunyai dua kata kerja. Jadi meskipun mesin kepemilikan, mesin cuci tumbuh secara signifikan, mesin cuci itu juga mengalami a slight decline, penurunan sedikit penurunan di tahun 1980 sebelum naik kembali ke 75% di tahun 2019. Nah, ini untuk body one, focus on the ownership, the level of ownership. Selanjutnya, we are going to move to the second body, the next paragraph, body two, focusing on the amount of time spent doing housework. Nah, ini ya. However, di sini ada hanya 4 kalimat. However, the average amount of time spent on housework. Spend di sini dia kata kerja tapi bukan kata kerja utama. Dia apa istilahnya ya? Past participle. Dia kata sifat. Jumlah waktu yang dihabiskan. Jumlah waktu yang dihabiskan dalam pengerjaan pekerjaan rumah showed the opposite trend, menunjukkan tren yang sebaliknya. Kalau tadi increase gradually atau increase generally, nah the time spent on housework showed the opposite trend. Jadi downward, trennya turun. Nah, di sini Kalimat yang kedua, households spend. Ini menghabiskan approximately 50 hours per week on housework. Kemudian kalimat yang ketiga, this figure gradually decline. Nah, ini kata kerjanya to around 35 hours in 1940. And ini adalah connecting words, connected, continued. Nah, ini juga kata kerja yang kedua, to fall over the following years. Dan terakhir, by 2000, the average rata-rata penggunaan waktu had dropped to about 15 hours per week before reaching only 10 hours in 2019. Jadi ini adalah contoh penulisan task one dengan introduction as the first paragraph, overview as the second paragraph, body one as the third paragraph talking about the level of ownership, and the last one, body two, talking about the amount of time spent on doing housework. Oke, seperti itu untuk sedikit feedback di task one. Hope you learned something from my explanation, and of course, like I used to tell you, practice writing by writing. Setelah kamu membaca penjelasan ini, you can rewrite the topic with your own understanding and also your own words. And practice will make you perfect. Okay, see you.